All right, kia ora everybody. Great to be here in the Otaki and Mana electorates as we enter the fourth to last day of this year's election campaign. It's great to see the momentum and the positivity of the Labour teams on the ground here who are getting out there and making it happen for Labour. Also great to run into a lot of people who have been out there and voted already and given their 2 ticks to Labour. So I want to say thank you to them for that. As we enter this final stretch of the campaign, I think it's becoming very clear to New Zealanders that if Christopher Luxon and the National Party win, they are going to lose. Because while very few New Zealanders, less than 1%, will benefit from the tax cuts that they have promised and the quantum that they have been promising, it's clear that everybody will pay. I'll give you 3 examples of why their numbers don't add up. First of all, less than 1% of New Zealanders would get the $250 a fortnight that the National Party have been repeatedly promising on the campaign trail. That is now very clear, and even they have admitted that. The second thing is that families or those who are on benefits could be $2,000 a year worse off, with thousands more children in poverty because of the benefit cuts that National are signalling. And then when we flip that, we see, and this is the third reason, $6,000 a year in tax breaks for landlords. I think that shows the National Party have their priorities all wrong. In a cost of living crisis, they want to take money away from our poorest families and have thousands more children living in poverty so that they can give tax breaks to landlords. I just think that is wrong. I think the National Party have got their priorities wrong. I think that New Zealanders are certainly coming to the realisation that if National wins, they are going to lose. Because whilst very few New Zealanders will benefit from the tax cuts that they have been promised, every New Zealander will pay the price of them.
Can you talk us through the by-election announcement you've just made?
So I consulted with the other parties. I think everybody was in agreement that the earliest date possible, the best, would be best. The official advice that I received was that the earliest the Electoral Commission believe they can do it is Saturday the 25th of November. And so I've approved it on that basis.
It was a bit of a weird law that a candidate who didn't really have much chance of winning that seat dies during the run-up to the voting day, and then we have to have a whole by-election.
It is a bit of a sort of I guess a technicality. However, having said that, if it had been one of the main candidates, for example, it could have had a material impact. So, and the Electoral Commission aren't in a position to form judgments on who was likely to be elected or not to be elected. So the process has to be fair. It's something that I think as we review the electoral law after the election, which we always do, we can look at whether there's a fairer way of dealing with that.
Will it be a big boost for National, do you think? Because Bailey normally holds that seat.
Well, I've been having this argument with people this morning because I think it's clear that a lot of people don't understand the way the MMP formula operates. So we will have an additional list MP in the next Parliament. So whoever gets that additional list seat are the ones who are most likely to benefit from this. And we won't know that until all the votes have been counted, including all the special votes, because the way the formula for allocating out list MPs flows, it just really depends on who would be the last MP in.
So this doesn't guarantee National an extra list seat?
Not necessarily.
Because if Andrew Bailey, he's number 16 on the list, which means he's pretty much guaranteed to get in. Then when the by-election is held, if he contests that and wins it, he resigns as a list MP, becomes an elected MP, and then another one comes in.
If the election came down to a 1-seat margin, once all of the votes were counted and all the 120 seats had been allocated, then that 121st seat could make a difference.
Yeah, so essentially you need every seat you can get, though, so this makes it hard for you.
Well, it could actually give us an extra seat, depending on who the last party is to get a list member.
Do you feel for those Port Waikato voters having to do this all over again pretty soon?
I think no one relishes the idea of a by-election immediately after the election, and in fact, it'll start before the election is even finished.
Do you have a position whether the law should be changed, to be clear?
I think we just need to look at the options for how best to deal with a situation where a candidate passes away after nomination day but before polling closes.
Will Labor stand a candidate?
I haven't made that decision yet.
So what date have you chosen?
So it is the 25th of November, Saturday the 25th. That's the advice that we've had from the Electoral Commission, is that's the earliest possible date they could do it. I think everyone would like to have it sooner if there was a way of doing it sooner, because the people in Port Waikato have just had an election campaign, so I think they've had the opportunity to think about who they might want to represent them. But unfortunately, they can't do it any faster than that.
How did we settle on that date?
The Electoral Commission provided a range of options. I indicated that I wanted the earliest available option. We then consulted with the other parties. The other parties asked, particularly the National Party asked, could it be even sooner than that? We went back to the Electoral Commission and they said no. So that's pretty much where it's landed.
What was the other option that's on the table?
the following weekend.
The $6,000 figure for the average landlord, right? Is that what you, that's what you said? It's about $6,000.
That's right.
Landlord. How do you get to that?
Well, the man who's involved in those figures is with me. Now, I have to say, he has to leave at about 10 past, so if you've got questions on costings and finances, make the most of the opportunity now.
Well, Thomas, it's essentially done by going through the data that has been publicly made available around interest deductibility and what that was worth, and then dividing it up by the number of landlords. Now, clearly, if you've got many properties, it'll start to change, but I think it's a relatively conservative estimate. And what I'd say, and I said it last night in the debate as well, and Chris has just said it now, it's really, we could have to fight about the exact number, but the reality is that is being prioritised by the National Party ahead of children in some of the lowest income households in New Zealand. It's a question of values, it's a question of priorities, and they've got them wrong.
Oh, so you take about, I forget what it is, about 500, 600 million divided by the number of landlords, and that's how you
Essentially get it.
Is there a $736 million hole in your budget?
Of course not. And it's interesting, isn't it, that the National Party quickly put this together after we essentially just went to a range of external commentators' views. So that's what we've done. You all know, all of you know, nobody believes that National's tax promise actually adds up. We put that together. They've now made a few of their own assumptions. They're wrong, for example, about the GST of fruit and vegetables. That's simply incorrect. They're double counting there. When it comes to what we've done with the dental care work, we've taken the Ministry of Health's costings there and used that rather than some extrapolation of the household expenditure survey. So we're very confident in our numbers. Their numbers have been proven by economists from left, right and centre to be wrong.
You've always said that it's free dental care for under 30s and then you'll expand it out to everyone else. Today you're kind of saying, no, it's free basic dental care.
Oh, that was very clear on the day. In fact, I remember standing in a stand-up just like this, where Aisha Verrill went through what was covered under free basic dental care. So that's been out there from day one.
But all your ads, though, say free dental care, and you're celebrating it. So
Yep, and we've been very clear that that's free basic dental care.
But it doesn't say the word basic in it. This is like D2, but for you guys.
Oh, I don't accept that at all.
Has campaign chair Chris Bishop been put in the freezer? We haven't seen him on the campaign trail for 5 or 6 days, I don't think.
He may have blotted his copybook by letting out the fact that the National Party is secretly planning for a second election.
National have been putting out ads saying that National are going to put up the age of superannuation, but omitting the fact that that won't happen until 2044. Is that misleading? No,
not at all. The National Party intends to raise the age of eligibility for superannuation, and there is a significant proportion of the people who will vote in this election that will have to wait longer for their retirement and, because of that.
Are you spooking older voters, making them think that perhaps they might lose their pension earlier?
No.
What about your ads that National's going to cut the winter energy payment?
We have not been running those ads.
The gist of National's arguments against you guys is that they would do a better job of running the economy than you guys could do. What do you say?
I say I deal in facts, and so let's deal in some facts. The New Zealand economy has grown more under Labour governments than it has under National governments. We've had more people in employment under Labour governments than under National governments. And we've actually had a better track record of having the government books in surplus under Labour governments than under National governments. So if you deal with results, I know Christopher Luxon likes to talk about results. If you judge our results against theirs, they're actually much better.
Hey, Winston Peters has told us today he reckons Christopher Luxon's making a bit of mischief talking about the second election. It's not looking great, is it?
I think it would be absolute pandemonium if Winston Peters, David Seymour, Christopher Luxon, Nicola Willis, Chris Bishop, and goodness knows who else is trying to sit around a table after the election and figure out how to form a government. I think New Zealanders can clearly see what an absolute train wreck that would be.
Grant, just because you've got to go soon, will, if you stay on as Finance Minister, are you going to put New Zealand in an endless debt spiral?
No, and what I'm going to do is exactly what I've been doing for the last 6 years, which is strike a really careful balance. We've faced some of the biggest challenges to New Zealand's economy in our history in the last 6 years, and we've come through that with an economy that's 8% larger than it was when we started, unemployment under 4% for 24 months, our level of debt lower than most of the countries we compare ourselves to. None of it's been easy, and it's been especially hard for New Zealand households and businesses through this time. But what they've had is a government that has been able to be on their side and get the results. And we don't need Nicola Willis to tell us that. We have independent ratings agencies who actually lifted our credit rating during COVID and have held it where it is now with a stable outlook. So I'd prefer to take their judgment on whether it's succeeding rather than hers.
Will you stake your job on your figures?
I think I have to, and I think every single finance minister has to.
So if they do blow out, if they do put us in an endless cycle of, what is it, spiral of debt, will you resign?
It isn't going to happen, but I would be judged, as all finance ministers will be, on how we go. And that's the thing. When you actually look at where we were, say, in 2020, in terms of debt, we're actually well back from there. Because as a government, we were careful and we were balanced, and we do see our debt peaking up at about 22% of GDP and then coming down again over the forecast period to about 18%. When those ratings agencies come into New Zealand, that's what they look at, and they look at it and they say, yep, New Zealand's doing well. They recently, Fitch, downgraded the US because their debt was spiralling. That's spiralling debt, not what we've got here.
Is that, just want to be really clear, you will resign if dental costs blow out or any of your budgets blow out?
I say every finance minister has to stand beside the figures that they put out, and I stand beside the figures I put
So
out.
that's a yes.
I stand beside the figures we've put out.
Would if they blow out? If Nick Lawless is right.
I tell you what, Lloyd, if there's a cyclone, maybe not, but otherwise I stand by the numbers.
National's saying that their indexation policy of benefits is more fiscally sustainable. You know, the current projection is for unemployment to rise a little bit. What's your take on that? Are you concerned about the indexation of benefits and what they do to the books?
What I'm concerned about is people in households where the benefit is the main income being able to feed their families. That's what I'm concerned about. And we heard from the Children's Commissioner when we made the change to indexing it to wages that it was one of the best things we could do to reduce child poverty. We can afford this because we're a decent country that looks after people. I honestly think when you look at National's fiscal plan, the fact that it's propped up by cutting benefits, cutting climate action, and bringing foreign buyers back into our housing market. If you just think about those three things, all of them are terrible. It doesn't add up. The fiscal plan is a sandcastle. National know that, hence why they're hitting out at us today.
And they say it's not a cut, it's a reduction in the increase.
Well, what do you think? I mean, in order for them to finance their fiscal plan, they have to find money. $2 billion is getting removed so that they can make their books balance. That's $2 billion that people in benefit-dependent households would have had. That is a cut.
Does National care more about landlords than beneficiaries?
Quite clearly, the priorities that they've shown in their fiscal plan is that they want to give $6,000 a year to landlords, and by the end of the forecast period, they want $2,000 a year to be out of the house of those benefit-dependent households. I think that's a sign of their priorities.
What do you make of the comment from National that their policy will drive down stop the upward spiral of rents? Do you think that's a fair thing to say that landlords would do?
I don't. I'll make a comment and then I'll probably disappear out the back. But what I'd say there is that we had Treasury, the Reserve Bank and the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development do a pretty comprehensive study, and it's the supply of housing that is the biggest determinant in rents. I think what we're going to see with interest deductibility coming back on is simply that landlords will benefit from that and renters won't benefit because National isn't planning to build any state houses after 2025 anyway. Sorry to...
Can you just very quickly, in your own words, because it wasn't your own words before, explain how you got the $6,000 a year for landlords?
Well, I just explained it there before. So basically, we've taken the amount of money that's available for interest deductibility and put that against the number of landlords. But I'll actually get you the calculation so you can see it.
Okay,
Prime Minister,
Yes.
can you share the most challenging conversation with a constituent you had on the trail today? Because one of National's allegations is that you only visit red seats and you surround yourself with volunteers or the Labor Army and you don't have any hard conversation.
Oh, that's just ridiculous.
So
But I'm not going to share every individual conversation that I have with people. People share their views with me. That's part of the campaign trail.
Did you get any negative feedback or did people?
Oh yeah, undoubtedly from time to time. You will have seen actually. I was just pressed on diabetes medication in Waikanai just before.
Was that your father we saw downstairs?
Yes, and I was very clear about the people who were greeting me, who were my mum and dad, who did come to say hello to me today.
Rawiri Waititi, he's tipped to win Wairiki. He's confident the left's going to do a bit better than expected on election night. He says he's expecting you to be giving him a call on Saturday night.
I look forward to speaking with him.
Just on the Scot base refurbishment being put on ice,
No.
It seems Antarctic New Zealand didn't lock in a price with Lees when they announced them as a preferred contractor. This keeps happening. Why did you allow this to happen?
Look, I haven't had a chance to look at that. I understand it's an issue around contractor availability, but I haven't had a detailed briefing on it.
Chris Hipkins, are you running the most negative and lie-driven campaign in recent history?
No, and actually, if you look at the analysis, the impartial, objective analysis of the National Party's campaign, which shows that 95% of their messaging has been negative, versus the analysis of Labor's campaign that shows that 60% of our messaging has been positive, I think it's very clear who's been running the most negative campaign.
Isn't you saying that National's cutting super equivalent to the National up to $250 comment, though?
No, because it is a fact. They're proposing to increase the age of eligibility for superannuation. We've been very clear in all of our messaging that that's what they're proposing to do.
You've got some pretty key context, though, haven't you?
Well, they can explain their own policy.
Just this is one of your ads, free dental care for all
Yes.
under 30s. There's no basic in there. It doesn't say basic.
Well, we've been very clear what's covered and what isn't.
That's not that clear, though.
It's very clear to New Zealanders that if they go to the dentist for their annual checkup, that will be free. That does not mean that every dental procedure and every surgery that they might need will be free.
But do you see that could, when people see that, they go, heck yeah, it doesn't cost me $3,000 to go to the dentist anymore?
For people going to the dentist for their basic care, it will be free.
You don't think it's a little bit misleading?
No.
After October 14, like whoever wins, coalition, blah, 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 it's going to be super close and it could come down to the specials. Should New Zealanders prepare for 3 weeks of basically sitting around?
After every MMP election, there's always the possibility that there'll be a period where the result isn't clear, because we could be waiting for special votes to be counted, for example. There's also could well be. There is also the potential for that even once the results are clear, that it takes some time for parties to have conversations about the formation of the next government. I've indicated that if we are in the position to form a government, we'll be aiming to do that expeditiously, and I'm confident that we would be able to do that. If Winston Peters holds the balance of power, who knows how long it might take.
But is there a realistic chance that it might wait until the day before the specials are back until you actually can start those negotiations?
I think if it's clear that we are within stone's throw of being able to that we either can form a government or that we're within stone's throw of forming a government, we would start those conversations straight away. I can tell you from past experience, the person who won't, because he never does, will be Winston Peters. He will leave the country hanging until the final vote count is in, because that is what he's done in every other election.
You've been working with both Māori Party and Greens in government. Presumably, as you've been talking to each other along the road, you've got a pretty good idea of what you would be able to do in terms of putting together a government. To what extent is any future government arrangement already pre-cooked?
Look, I don't think we would have a great degree of difficulty in finding plenty of common ground to form government. I'm sure there are going to be areas where we're going to have some, good conversations and very constructive conversations if we're in the position to be able to do that. But I'm confident we'd be able to pull together a very positive, forward-looking government for New Zealand.
What do you think you can offer the Māori Party that would bring them on board?
Well, look, I know from my conversations with them that the Māori Party, whilst they're out competing with us, we have a state of co-opetition with both the Greens and the Māori Party in the election campaign. I know that they are very supportive of a lot of the work that we have done in the Māori space. So I think, again, we've got a lot of common ground.
At the beginning of the campaign, you said that you'd have more to say on Let's Get Wellington moving later on in the campaign.
Yeah.
What is...
Well, we did. In fact, we released the government policy statement on land transport, which makes clear 2 initiatives from Let's Get Wellington moving are being prioritised by a Labour-led government, which is the new Mount Victoria Tunnel and mass rapid transit. We've left open the option for what mass rapid transit is, whether it's bus lanes or light rail. We've left that open, but we've been clear that of all of the Let's Get Welly moving projects, those are the 2 that we are going to prioritise.
And the rest of Let's Get Wellington, the governance structure, you have no plans to change that?
We'll continue to work constructively with the local authorities in Wellington around Wellington transport projects, but the 2 that we are prioritising are the tunnel and mass rapid transit.
It seemed like earlier in the campaign that the governance structure might sort of disintegrate because there was no reason for it anymore.
Well, by bringing those 2 projects under the auspices of the National Land Transport Fund, it by definition means that central government will be playing a more directive role in those projects.
So do you anticipate Let's Get Wellington moving as like a governance thing disappearing?
Look, I'm open to continuing to work through some kind of partnership. Whether it's the current partnership or not, those are conversations that we can have, but I've been very clear on the 2 projects that we're prioritising.
Any more to say on Auckland Light Rail before the election?
We've got a business case being developed at the moment. That will identify the preferred route. It will identify the preferred construction method, whether it's underground, overground, or a combination of both. It will identify where the stations might be. It would identify the cost. It would identify construction timeframes, and it will identify financing options, how we would finance it over the life of the project.
And just getting back to the coalition, possible coalition talks, James Shaw has repeatedly said that the Greens want to have seats in the cabinet. Are you open to that this time round with the Greens?
That's all a matter of post-election negotiation, but I've said that all options are on the table, whether it's confidence in supply, whether it's coalition. Obviously, different governing arrangements have different trade-offs for the parties. And I think that's actually the last conversation that you have when you're having these conversations. So I think the first conversation is, what are our shared objectives? What are the policies that we want to pursue together? Figure all of that out first. Then you have a conversation about, okay, what's the best way of driving that forward? Is it a coalition? Is it a confidence and supply agreement or whatever? I think that conversation is the last of the conversations you have.
Prime Minister, there's more than 500,000 Kiwis in Australia. That's a lot of potential votes that could have a big sway here. What's Labor got on offer for them?
Obviously, I'm very proud of the work that we have done alongside the Albanese Labor government in Australia to deliver much better support for New Zealanders who are living in Australia. The fact that they now have a pathway to citizenship, which they previously didn't, is a sign of the work that we have been doing, our 2 Labor governments working together to deliver for Kiwis in Australia. I'm really proud of our track record. Prime Minister Albanese and I set out some joint goals in terms of issues that we want to progress next, including making the Trans-Tasman border a much more seamless one. It's something that various governments on both sides of the Tasman have talked about for a long time. We believe that we can actually drive it forward and make it happen. I look forward to working with him in the next term to make that happen.
There's talk of Jacinda Ardern joining you in the next few days. Do we know when that's going to happen?
She's not going to be here in New Zealand. She's over in Boston, but I'm sure that I've had a conversation with her. She'll certainly be, she's more to the point, she's contacted me to indicate that she is intending to be very supportive in the last few days of the campaign.
Do you think this campaign has been fair on voters? Has it been easy for them to follow the policies and understand what each party is actually offering?
I think all campaigns are a contest of ideas, and this one certainly has been.
But do you think your ideas have the ideas been clear? Has it been clear what voters are actually deciding between?
Well, look, I can put my hand on my heart and say that all of our policies are out there. They are properly costed. People can scrutinise the costings, and we certainly don't have economists from the left, right and the centre saying that our numbers don't add up.
When you say more supportive, Jacinda Ardern is going to be more supportive over the next few days, does that mean...
Just wait and see. You'll just have to wait and see.
Do you seriously think, with the whole Port Waikato quirk, do you seriously think that you could end up with another MP from it?
So,
what are the chances of Labor gaining an MP because of it?
Just as likely as any of the other parties gaining an extra MP. So there is a formula that allocates out list seats. Because the Port Waikato seat will not be filled on election night, an additional list seat will be allocated. That will go to the party that would be next in the formula. That could be any one of the parties that's successfully represented in Parliament, depending on how the final votes fall. There's effectively a table that you go through that allocates out the seats. So that one extra list seat, so the effect of the Port Waikato seat not being filled means one more list seat. Any of the parties in Parliament could benefit from that.
It was quite a warm welcome you got there in Waikanae. Is that the warmest welcome you've had this campaign?
I've had a lot of warm welcomes along the way. And look, it was a friendly crowd, obviously. You know, there's a lot of Labor supporters there and quite a few members of the public as well who had been out to vote and came up to express their support. I've actually been getting very warmly received around the country. Think about the walkthroughs that I've done in various shopping malls in Auckland in the last couple of days. Very similar response there. Very similar response in Christchurch when we did a walkthrough there. I can't remember, 2.5 weeks ago now. You lose track of time in these things. So,
was that sort of the peak, like today, or has there been a peak in the campaign for you so far?
No, we've been really enjoying the campaign. We've been getting a very positive feel on the ground.
Is it true that that countdown that you were at before in Waikanae, was that one that you worked in?
Yeah, so the first job that I had I just finished secondary school was working for Quality Bakers. I used to stack bread That was the way that I financed my university studies. And the 3 supermarkets that I started with were Pack and Save here in Coastlands, Woolworths, now Countdown here in Coastlands, and Woolworths, now Countdown in Waikanae.
Was it a sort of full circle moment going back there?
Yeah, I mean, didn't get to go into the shop, but yeah, I used to do the circuit of those 3 supermarkets on a daily basis right the way through the summer break. It's how I financed some of my university study.
Nicola Willis this morning quoted Cameron Bagri, who last night said that their tax plans are possible, feasible, but she didn't include that. He said, but not probable. What do you make of that?
I think Nicola Willis is absolutely clutching at straws. I think you've got economists from right the way across the political spectrum, as well as the economic spectrum, who are saying that her numbers just don't add up.
Here's a tweet from me
Okay.
on the 3rd of September.
I'm going to have to go.
Dental care.
Yep.
You're going to go and edit that to say basic.
No, I think everybody's been very clear what's covered and what's not. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.